Okay, I guess you know we're being recorded. Welcome to Book Sandwiched In. This is our second book in our series of 6 books. The next 3 are going to be here, and then our last one will be an evening at Heirloom Rustic Ales, and that's always a lot of fun. We are sponsored by Friends of the Library. If you are not a member yet, there's applications on the back table. And also remind you, the creative writing contest is coming up. We have a few more weeks to enter that. So today we're going to be discussing West with Giraffes. And Heather Lozano is going to be leading the review. She's the adult service manager at Central Library. She completed her master's in library and information science from Oklahoma University and also has a bachelor's degree in psychology. Heather has been published in Tulsa Kids Magazine, BA Magazine, the library's Kids Read blog, and Public Services Quarterly, Future Voices in Public Service. She loves spending time with her 7-year-old, baking and crafting, and like any good librarian, reading with one of her 3 tuxedo cats on her lap. And before we get started, just a reminder to please mute your cell phones. And welcome to Heather.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. As mentioned, I'm Heather Lozano. This is my 3rd time with the privilege and honor of presenting for Book Sandwiched In. And each time I've presented, I've had a different role here at TCCL. So I've come to consider this a bit of good luck charm for me. I am the adult services manager here at Central. So I spend a lot of my time hosting programs in this room and hosting large programs like One Book, One Tulsa and other great things for adults. Today, we'll be talking about Lynda Rutledge's book, West with Giraffes, a tale based on a true story of 2 giraffes who survive a hurricane and then embark on a cross-country road trip. With the help of some humans. From New York to San Diego, California. This title was super intriguing to me for 2 reasons. First, I am from Southern California, so I take the second half of their road trip every single year. This is the last time we went west with a giraffe. His name was Joffrey. So my daughter's been on this journey since she was 2.5 weeks old. And while traveling with an energetic toddler isn't easy, I'm 100% sure that it's easier than this. Second, I just really like giraffes. So we'll go back a little out of order. This is a picture of a giraffe I spotted, little giraffe pun for you, in Kenya. And then this is my daughter and I meeting a giraffe named Sophie. Just after this picture, she jerks the giraffe, stuck out her remarkably long tongue and licked my child, her big giraffe tongue wrapped all the way around her tiny baby head. And that is a memory that will live with me forever. Now, Lynda Rutledge, today's author, worked as a journalist and contributed to a full-length nonfiction book on the history of the San Diego Zoo from 1916 to 2016. This inspired the fiction work we're discussing today. She explained, it started with a stack of yellowed news clippings, a very old map, and a blank whiteboard. Over the year, it turned into this calculated mess, and only then I finally began to write. While the tone is heartwarming and engaging, there's a great undercurrent of research. All those notes were not written in vain. While this is based on the true story of the transport of 2 giraffes cross-country, the giraffes and the vehicles therein are really there to propel the story of the main character and his growth and self-discovery. The book opens with an introduction to Woodrow Wilson Nichol, Wooden Nickel. He's 105 and his time on Earth is about to end. He's alone in the world, so I guess no one took the wooden nickel. And we don't know much else about him. And he's describing punching a TV because the news anchor says giraffes are soon to be extinct. The remainder of the story is told from his recollections. We're taken back to 1938. An orphan boy has blown into New York to stay with an unloving uncle, and a hurricane has blown in, causing all sorts of trouble, especially for a pair of giraffes who need to get to San Diego, California. With the injuries suffered on the journey, they need to arrive in under 2 weeks. The country was beginning to recover from the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. Our main character has seen some significant hardship and has buried everyone he's ever loved. If there was ever a time to find unusual sparks of joy in the form of these elegant, gentle giants, that was the time. Though I suppose elegant is a subjective word. We then get the next important clue about Woodrow. He's an animal lover. He describes seeing the giraffes for the first time, saying, "When I locked eyes with an animal, I felt something more soulful than I ever felt from humans I knew." I think there's a certain amount of nurturing and compassion that one needs to be an animal lover. In this context, we get the idea that despite the suffering he's seen, Woodrow isn't fully hardened to the world and the circumstances he's faced. We are next introduced to Red, a fiery reporter who joins the unusual caravan. She is Woodrow's love interest, and the story twists and turns right along with the road they drive along. When asked, "How did you manage to write a historical novel, a social and political commentary, a coming-of-age story, and a love story all in one book?" Rutledge replied, "I had a lot to work with and I had the time of my life creating it." And I think that's evident when you read her words. The giraffes, who are named Lofty and Patches, attract national attention to both the detriment and salvation of the travel party. Imagine the pitfalls of trying to travel through winding mountain roads with the kind of blind spots 2 crates of giraffes would create. Then consider weather or run-ins with other travelers. Throughout the book, we experience the road trip, but as miles grow, so does the connection between the travelers and the animals. We watch Woodrow go from a young man with no support or relationships to growing into one of my favorite literary tropes, a found family. Though I have a very large and connected family, I have friends who are just as close as relatives, and I really enjoy watching characters connect and lean on one another. The core of this book is joyful, but growth comes with pain, and readers experience some of the emotion through the experience of the characters. Rutledge says, "I'm told my style is humorously serious. I like that." Robert Frost nailed what a good piece of writing should do, saying it begins in delight and ends in wisdom. A good story, the kind that stays with you and gives you food for thought, packs a velvet punch. So it must have some gravitas to it, but it should be delivered lightly and with a dash of joy. That's what I'm aiming for in my novels, the past ones and the ones still to come. The story doesn't end with the road. We get a glimpse into the San Diego Zoo. A revolution for its time, this was one of the first zoos to remove animals from cages and place them in habitats that more closely represent the environment from which they came. One of the main characters, who's called Old Man, explains, "I headed to San Diego and their new zoo, where I'd heard that the animals get treated better than the people. I hope to die there. I do." This is the zoo's current giraffe exhibit. So what must that have been like for Woody, who had just experienced the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression, who watched his human companions die from the conditions they were living in, to bring these animals he cares for and respects to a place where they will be cared for and respected? Woody is clear throughout the story that he firmly believes animals and humans are on equal footing, and I would venture to say they became part of his found family too. This is Lofty and Patches. They lived in the San Diego Zoo for nearly 30 years. During that time, they had 7 offspring, including aptly named D-Day, who was born June 6, 1944. The writer tells this story with a bit of mystery, leaving some loose ends. You think you always get to know the ending of the story? Most times you're lucky if you get your ending. This is our ending. It's a happy one, says one of her characters. Overall, this is a lovely story, especially for history and animal lovers. And if you liked any of these titles, West with Giraffes may appeal to you. The Lincoln Highway, where orphaned young men stumble into life-changing cross-country road trips in these historical, picturesque coming-of-age novels that vividly evoke mid-20th century America, so 1950s in Lincoln Highway and 1930s in West with Giraffes. Water for Elephants by Sarah Gruen. These books are heartwarming and engaging, and they have the genres adult books for young adults and the subjects giraffes, senior men, depressions, and take place between 1929 and 1941, or Jojo Moyes, The Giver of the Stars. These books have the genre historical fiction and the subjects adventure, depression, and independence. And that's all I have for you today. Like I said, I very much enjoyed this book. It's a bit hard to present on it and not ruin it because there's so many things that you just need to experience as you read it along with the characters. A road trip's not something you can tell a story about, right? Because anytime you, not secondhand, because anytime you take a road trip and you go on a lengthy journey, it's not always the most exciting for people to hear about if you were telling your friend who told your friend, if that makes sense. Like they had snacks, they saw Arizona, Grand Canyon, you're done. But there are so many twists and turns that we see throughout this story that you really want to capture for yourself. So I highly recommend. I've seen a few reviews that didn't love the title at the beginning because it does move a little bit slowly, but there's a lot of characters to introduce. There's a lot of setup. I mean, it's a lot of work getting giraffes from point A to point B. And the author sets it up in such a way that she takes her time, but then you hit the middle and it picks up and it becomes incredibly engaging. And by the time you reach the end, you're very glad you did. So I highly recommend pushing through some of the drier portions and yeah, really going on that journey with the characters. Yeah.
You mentioned all the different things that she addresses, and she also addresses racial prejudice
Yes,
and handles it really well.
I agree. There's a cast of characters, and I mean, there was an enormous amount of prejudice in that time period. There is now today. And the way that she has the characters interacting and intertwining, I think really speaks volumes to the end goal, what we want to see, the kind of relationships we want built. Yeah.
Well, this is Women's History Month, and wasn't Destiny as a director a woman?
It was indeed. I'm trying to remember, I believe her name was Bonnie. Yes, it was the first time to have a woman in the role, and it was the first time for them to turn a profit in 22 years. Yes.
I love this book, and I'm the one that nominated it. And there's much more to say. They had every stressor, every imaginable, to the point that if it wasn't based on reality, you would think they were making it up.
Absolutely.
And I thought that was compelling. All the relationships, from the youngest to the middle to the oldest, they all came to appreciate others' point of view, even though they butt heads. And that was, I think, yet another thing. I think that being from Oklahoma, knowing something about the Dust Bowl, although that was more focused in Texas, that was also compelling. The prejudice, of course, trying to keep everybody fed along the way, including the giraffes. I guess this was a sensible omission, but they never talked about the fact that these animals, had to go to the bathroom. And that was another pressure and stressor, and really, I almost wish that had been included, because clearly it had to be dealt with.
What do you do?
But just wondering if they were gonna have what they needed to keep them fed and keep them alive, and some real stressful points of where they got hurt or risked being even hurt more. So extremely difficult
Yes.
journey and extremely important goal of getting them there. It was one of, I think, first to ever be in a zoo. They came from Africa and then hit the hurricane, or it would have gone better. So anyway, there's so much to it. I've given it to about everybody I know, male and female, and it's very well loved. So.
I agree. It does
really-
absolutely have
really good. Yeah.
universal feel. Yeah, I want you to read it. I think that the characters coming out of such hardship and having to survive every day made them more resilient throughout this trip and more able to function within the confines of what they were looking at. I think an interesting fact I learned is that giraffes eat onions. I had no idea.
Yeah, that's the only thing that have told me since I don't like onions.
Yeah. I think that's
So
fair.
it was interesting and for resilience, I just almost came apart at various times.
Haven't we all?
Absolutely.
I think that all of us have experienced moments where we're like, done, but we understand that we are resilient and we can push through. And I think it's interesting how our past and our difficulties build that resilience in us. And I think had they not come out of something so traumatic and dire, this might not have been a success, which I think is really interesting.
I thought it was interesting that the author worked in just a hint of clairvoyance into the story. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to kind of stick in there.
That is interesting. That is. Don't know what to say on that one. I really liked how we're getting told this story and then we're getting interrupted because orderlies are coming to take care of 105-year-old Woodrow. And as he's telling his story, you have to pause and he has to pause and he has to tell them to leave him alone and then go about his day. So I think with that and then the clairvoyance aspect, there's just a lot of perspective in the book, which is really interesting. I think it didn't feel like you were being told 14 stories at a time though, which is something I tend to struggle with when there's many points of view and when there's many characters and there's lots of different experiences going on in a book. Is sometimes it gets muddy and I don't feel like Rutledge did that. I feel like she kept a very clear voice throughout. Would you agree?
Okay, I'm gonna admit that I read this when it first came out, so my memory's a little bit fuzzy, but can you talk about the female character in the book? Because I think that for that time period, it was unusual for a woman to be out reporting.
Yes, the female character, Augie or Red, they even describe her as having worn pants, which is, I think, still kind of shocking for 1938. And she's fiery and she's resilient and she's just on this road trip with these boys and these giraffes, and she's holding her own and she's photographing the journey. And I believe in the actual occurrence, there was a woman who came and photographed everything. But I'm not 100% sure. But alongside the zoo director, we also have Red for that theme of strong women standing within these rough and tumble boys who have seen so much, because the women have seen so much too.
Facebook, I was impressed with the hospitality of the people where they come along the way. Everyone seems so generous. They look up kindness.
It is a book of kindness. I think that's such a great description of the book, because we have the kindness of the animal, or the kindness that you need to extend to an animal to take care of it on a 12-day road trip. We have the kindness of the people that are surrounding this caravan, because what a spectacle to see two giraffes driving down the road, especially in 1938. And the characters, or I guess they're the people along the journey, really do a lot to take care of the characters in the car and the characters on the road. They do a lot to support them. They do a lot to kind of block them from some of the troubles. And I think it's very interesting, the kindness and the togetherness that you see, especially for Woodrow, who had nobody. And all of a sudden, the entire country is supporting him as he's, embarking. How healing, right? Yes,
How much fun this book must have been to research.
it looks so
Every rural town, I think everyone would it's covered in a local newspaper. So many people have never seen a giraffe in real life.
Yeah. Driving down your street. I've read a lot of just review from the author herself, and every time she talks about it, it's just this like, this was so much fun. And I think she got a lot of her research as she was researching the San Diego Zoo for that first volume of the history of the zoo. And she just talks about how this was just such a joy and so fun and interesting to write. And I don't know, I'm a former research librarian. I love going through old newspapers, seeing how things are reported. And I bet the research process on this was absolutely delightful.
Another title for it, when you showed the whiteboard, it seemed like there was another title.
On the whiteboard, it said the hurricane giraffes, and I don't know if that was her standing title or if that was an original title, or if that's just what she wrote to make sense of everything. It's on that board because you got to put something somewhere. She might have started it as the hurricane giraffes because that was what they were called in the past, because they had survived this lengthy hurricane. And I think a central part of the giraffe story was one of the giraffes was injured. And that's why they had to take this road trip in 12 days instead of taking 2 weeks. It was just kind of imperative that they get there as soon as possible, because the female giraffe's life was kind of in danger at that point. So they needed to move quickly.
Rutledge handled the tension really well, because there were times when I was holding my breath because there was something so dangerous happening, and she manages to show the resolution, and then we have a little bit of smooth travel and then another danger.
I think that's that velvet punch she was talking about. She did a great job of making sure you were on the edge of your seat, which is why when I've read some reviews where they're like, oh, it wasn't that good. I'm like, yes, it was. Because you're excited, you're on the edge of your seat, and then things are resolved, and then something else comes, because I mean, that's life, especially on an undeveloped highway in 1930s. There's a pitfall around every corner. And then you had giraffes.
Well, I remember that a friend gave me the book and said it was my favorite book that she had ever read. And I was a little bit hesitant to read it, but afterwards, I also gave it to my son and to my sister and to my daughter for Christmas.
Oh, I love
the
that.
year I read it, because it was so good. And there is a mystery to also about Red
Mhm.
in the story, which you didn't mention at all.
Yes, everyone has a bit of a secret, and Red's mystery is a pretty intense one. And that's something he has to wrestle with while he's on the road. It's hard. You don't want to give stuff away, and you don't want to oversell it because it's so good.
Just right there,
Mhm.
include it, other people wanting to read.
Yes, there's a bit of a mystery about Red and his whereabouts and how he got to where he got. And something he has to deal with internally. And it's a big struggle. So that's another very tantalizing tidbit.
I'm curious, how many people here read?
I'm very glad that we get to discuss this a bit more and have a bit more of a dialogue about it, because it's the kind of thing you want to talk about.
Do you know if the library has the history book that you wrote about the city?
That is an excellent question. I am not sure, but I can find out. I could absolutely find out. It seems like the type of volume that would probably be more likely found in a library in California. But that doesn't mean we can't interlibrary them. So we'll take a look. It was called The History of the San Diego Zoo from 1916 to 2016, Volume 1. And I believe it has a picture of a very cute panda bear on the cover. It does sound very interesting.
Shared with us. Was that the
It is, this is the current giraffe enclosure. You're not wrong. We do have a world-class zoo in Tulsa, that is for sure, and this book will make you want to visit it. If they do. Very spacious. It was hard to find pictures that weren't kind of cropped for their their enclosures now. Or back then, yeah.
One point that she made that I thought was very charming was that you don't have to know the answer to every question and that people are entitled to some of their secrets.
Indeed, and I tend to be, I like to say it's because I'm an information professional, but the fact of the matter is I like gossip. And I want to know people's secrets. It's why I like reality television, and I think it's a great reminder that, yeah, sometimes you don't get to know everything about everybody, and you have to just kind of rest in that. And this book does a good job of that, but I think all of the characters have a little bit of something that they're carrying. I want to say there's a giraffe named April, and I'm not 100% sure. I read a lot about giraffes this week. I think there's a giraffe named April who was a descendant of these giraffes, but I'm not 100% sure because I read a lot of giraffe names this week. And I'm not certain, but I think possibly.
I don't know all the details, but there's a history of how giraffes came to the Tulsa Zoo. The Tulsa World sponsored a fundraising contest to name the giraffes, and I don't know much about the story, but I do know I think it was in the 50s before Tulsa Zoo had giraffes. And I don't know the details, but it's kind of an interesting story because it ran for a while, several months or a couple of months to raise enough money through naming the giraffes that were coming to the Tulsa Zoo.
Oh, interesting.
Somebody else may know that.
We have the microfilm from Tulsa World 1950s right on upstairs. And now I am very curious to see if I can find that. Lofty and Patches were also named by contest. I think Lofty is a perfect name for a giraffe.
So what were you?
Lofty and Patches.
And I had been here, like, does it go into any detail on that, how they decided to construct the enclosure on the back of the truck and how they measured and when underpasses?
I'm trying to remember, I'm pretty sure there weren't many underpasses for them to worry about, because the infrastructure was pretty poor. Was there one?
There was one that
One.
let air out of the tires. Remember?
Oh, yes. I mean, what a creative solution. That is interesting problem solving that I'm 1000% sure I would never come up with. I'd be like, these giraffes live here now.
Tell them the names of these giraffes in the story.
Lofty and Patches are these giraffes.
No, in the book.
Oh, in the book. Oh my gosh, I got
Boy.
boy and girl, right? Boy and girl. I kept thinking to myself, like, surely I'm like missing something. Or it's boy and girl. Which, I mean, now you know which is which. So. Because of the, yeah, that's right, because of the naming. Thank you. I completely forgot that aspect of it. But in regards to the construction, I feel like it was already constructed right away.
Horrible, horrible.
Yeah. It didn't, I mean, I wouldn't put my cat in it. That's for sure. Looks precarious to me. Yeah, the physics of it look really kind of unnerving.
This is one of the first graphs they probably didn't know what to do.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, as far as solutions go, that's one of the better ones. I believe they were lifted by crane onto the truck and then by crane into the enclosure.
Didn't they need a circus train?
They met a circus train that became a bit of a
And did they have direct?
portion of Harold.
They wanted, but yeah, they were in danger of being stolen. To me, that would have been a safer way.
Via train. I wonder if it was a speed issue because they had to get the giraffe there quickly because of its injury. So I'm wondering if maybe that was the original plan. Because in the opening of the book, they weren't sure one of the giraffes survived at first, and old man whispered giraffe songs to it, which I thought was very sweet and tender for such a gruff character. And he calls them his darlings, which I think is very sweet. Well, thank you for joining us. I do hope you read it.
I just wanted to say thank you to Heather. And also to remind you that next Monday is another historical fiction. It's called By Her Own Design, and it's about the fashion designer that designed Jackie Kennedy's wedding dress. And that's going to be, that was a great book. So we'll see you again next Monday. Oh, oh, that's great. That'll be what she said. The person that's giving the talk is a designer and she's going to bring some of her own designs. So we'll see you next Monday here at Central Library. Thank you.